Chapter 3, The Gunpowder Arsenal, Building the Ultimate Doomsday Machine. As the nations of Europe swayed precariously on the brink of war, their ambitions and fears were increasingly backed by an unprecedented military buildup. This was a continental competition, a relentless drive to construct the ultimate doomsday machine. Each power, driven by the big lie that superior firepower guaranteed victory and deterred aggression, poured vast resources into a furious arms race, creating weapons and strategies that would soon unleash destruction on a scale previously unimaginable. The sound of new battleships hitting the water, the thunder of artillery testing, and the endless march of conscripted millions were the grim overture to the coming storm. The ultimate weapon, Britain versus Germany in the race for naval domination. For centuries, sea power had been Britain's shield and its claim to global dominance. But in the early 20th century, that supremacy was aggressively challenged, primarily by a rapidly industrializing Germany, leading to an intense and incredibly expensive naval arms race. The Dreadnought Delusion, how one ship changed everything. The game-changer arrived in 1906, HMS Dreadnought. This British battleship was not merely an incremental improvement, it was a revolutionary leap in naval technology. With its all-big gun armament, 10 12-inch guns, far more than previous battleships, turbine engines for unprecedented speed, and thick armor, the Dreadnought instantly rendered every other battleship in the world obsolete. This technological leap sparked a furious naval building race. The Dreadnought Delusion was the big lie that acquiring enough of these monstrous ships would guarantee supremacy or, conversely, prevent war. Germany, determined to challenge Britain's global dominance and fueled by Kaiser Wilhelm II's personal passion for the Navy, responded in kind, building its own class of dreadnoughts. This became a hugely expensive and destabilizing competition, consuming vast national resources and driving mutual suspicion and fear between the two powers. Every new keel laid down was perceived as a direct threat by the other side, tightening the noose around Europe's neck. The global sea chase, other nations joined the arms frenzy. The dreadnought revolution wasn't confined to Britain and Germany. Smaller naval powers, fearing irrelevance or seeking regional dominance, quickly joined the global sea chase. The United States, Japan, France, Italy, and even Austria-Hungary began constructing their own dreadnought-style battleships. This widespread arms frenzy meant that by 1914, the world's oceans were bristling with more powerful, more destructive warships than ever before. While some hoped this naval might would serve as a deterrent, it often had the opposite effect, escalating tensions and creating an environment where a minor incident at sea could quickly ignite a wider conflict. Each nation, convinced its security rested on its naval might, poured vast sums into floating fortresses, unknowingly preparing the tools for their own undoing. Armies unleashed, Europe's marching millions. While the naval race captured headlines, the real might of Europe's powers lay in their immense land armies. Decades of preparation had created forces of unprecedented scale and destructive capability, ready to be unleashed. The conscripts' burden, who fought in the armies of 1914. The vast majority of Europe's major powers, Germany, France, Russia, Austria-Hungary, Italy, relied on conscription, compulsory military service for all able-bodied young men. This system allowed them to field armies of staggering size, transforming ordinary citizens into soldiers. Germany maintained an active army of around 800,000 men in 1914, with millions more in trained reserves, capable of mobilizing over 4 million at the outset. France, faced with Germany's larger population, extended its conscription to 3 years, fielding an active army of 750,000 and a reserve potential of over 3.5 million. Russia possessed the largest active army, over 1.4 million men, with an estimated 5 million in reserves, though its vast size made rapid mobilization a challenge. Austria-Hungary, its multi-ethnic army, though often suffering from internal tensions, could mobilize over 3 million men. The sheer scale of manpower available meant that any conflict would not be a localized skirmish but a war of marching millions, a true national endeavor. The big lie was that these millions could be easily controlled and directed in the brutal chaos of modern war. The roar of steel, artillery's deadly promise. At the cutting edge of land warfare stood artillery. Rapid-fire field guns and heavy howitzers, capable of delivering devastating barrages, were seen as the dominant force on the battlefield. French 75mm field gun, a revolutionary weapon, capable of firing 15 to 20 rounds per minute, widely considered the best field gun of its time. German Krupp howitzers. Germany excelled in heavy artillery, developing massive guns like the 420mm Big Bertha, capable of smashing through concrete fortifications. The rapid advancements in artillery technology promised unprecedented destructive power, yet generals, still clinging to doctrines of maneuver, often underestimated the sheer scale of the bombardment that would soon turn battlefields into lunar landscapes. The big lie that artillery would simply clear the way for infantry advances, rather than pulverize entire landscapes, would soon be exposed. The Reaper's scythe, the unseen power of the machine gun. Perhaps the most tragically underestimated weapon of 1914 was the machine gun. Early designs like the Maxim gun had seen limited colonial use, but their true defensive power was poorly understood by most military planners. Rate of fire. A single machine gun could fire hundreds of rounds per minute, effectively replacing dozens of riflemen. Defensive advantage. Commanders largely failed to grasp that a few well-placed machine guns, supported by barbed wire and trenches, could decimate massed infantry assaults. The big lie that courage and bayonet charges could overcome bullets would lead to suicidal frontal assaults against this ultimate Reaper's scythe, turning battlefields into slaughterhouses. Wings of war, early aviation's fledgling role. Still in its infancy, aviation's role in warfare was just beginning to emerge. In 1914, aircraft were flimsy, biplane contraptions, primarily seen as tools for reconnaissance. Spotting. Pilots could fly over enemy lines, sketching troop movements, artillery positions, and supply lines, providing invaluable intelligence. Early aerial combat. The first thoughts of aerial combat were still rudimentary, with pilots initially waving or even exchanging pistol shots. The idea of dedicated fighter planes or strategic bombing was a distant future. While not yet the dominant force it would become, early aviation hinted at a new dimension of warfare, challenging the big lie that battle could only be fought on land and sea. The blueprint for disaster, every nation's fatal flaw. Each major power entered the war with a meticulously crafted strategic plan, a blueprint for swift, decisive victory. Yet, each of these plans, based on outdated assumptions and flawed intelligence, contained a fatal flaw, a big lie about the nature of modern warfare that would lead directly to stalemate and unprecedented carnage. Germany's grand plan, the Schlieffen masterpiece, and its hidden flaws. Germany's strategic heart belonged to the Schlieffen Plan, an audacious and highly aggressive blueprint for a two-front war. Devised by Count Alfred von Schlieffen, then revised by Helmuth von Moltke the Younger, it aimed to avoid a prolonged war of attrition. The audacious corps, deliver a lightning-fast knockout blow against France within 6 weeks, before slow-mobilizing Russia could fully enter the war. This involved a massive, sweeping invasion through neutral Belgium and the Netherlands, encircling Paris from the north and west. The hidden flaws. Violation of neutrality. The invasion of Belgium, guaranteed by international treaty, instantly brought Britain into the war. Logistical nightmare. The sheer speed and distance required were almost impossible for a 1914 army to maintain, leading to exhausted troops and overstretched supply lines. Underestimation of resistance. Belgian resistance and the speed of the British Expeditionary Forces deployment were underestimated. Rigidity. The plan allowed for little flexibility, unable to adapt to unforeseen circumstances. The big lie of the Schlieffen Plan was that a perfect military timetable, meticulously planned in peacetime, could account for the unpredictable chaos and friction of real war. It was a masterpiece of strategic arrogance that, by its very design, ensured a wider, longer war. France's Élan Vital, the deadly illusion of the offensive. France's strategy, embodied in Plan 17, was almost a mirror image of Germany's aggression, but fatally flawed by its own big lie, the belief in Élan Vital, sheer fighting spirit. The core idea: French generals, particularly Ferdinand Foch and Joseph Joffre, believed that the offensive spirit, the courage and determination of the French soldier, would overcome any obstacle, including superior German firepower. Deadly illusion. Plan 17 called for immediate, aggressive frontal assaults into Alsace-Lorraine and the Ardennes, relying on bayonet charges and a relentless forward momentum. It largely underestimated the defensive power of modern artillery and machine guns. This deadly illusion of the offensive would lead to catastrophic casualties in the opening weeks of the war, as wave after wave of brightly uniformed French soldiers were mown down by German defensive fire. France was prepared to bleed for victory, driven by a big lie that courage alone would suffice. Russia's sacrifice, the vast army built for collapse. Russia's plan was centered on its immense manpower, but it was a vast army built for collapse. Its strategy involved a two-front attack. Primary focus: a main offensive against Austria-Hungary in Galicia. Secondary, crucial offensive: a rapid, though less prepared, invasion of East Prussia against Germany, designed to draw German forces away from the Western Front and relieve pressure on France. The big lie was that Russia's sheer numbers could compensate for its profound logistical weaknesses, outdated leadership, and woefully inadequate infrastructure. Its vast mobilization, while intimidating, was slow and cumbersome, and its supply lines would prove incredibly fragile under the strains of modern warfare. This plan effectively ensured that Russia would fight a war of immense sacrifice, ultimately contributing to its own internal collapse. Austria-Hungary's Balkan bind, trapped by its own ambition. Austria-Hungary's strategic plans were complex and contradictory, reflecting its multi-front concerns and its fundamental weaknesses. Its military chief, Konrad von Hötzendorf, developed plans that often seemed overly ambitious. Plan B, Balkans focused on crushing Serbia, its primary immediate target. Plan R, Russia, a larger contingency plan for a major war with Russia, its formidable allies' protector. The big lie was that Austria-Hungary could effectively fight two major wars simultaneously, one against Serbia and another against Russia, with its ethnically divided and often poorly equipped army. The empire found itself caught in a Balkan bind, trapped by its own ambition and internal fears, unable to decisively defeat Serbia while simultaneously facing the Russian colossus. Britain's small spark, the professionals who held the line. Unlike the continental powers, Britain did not have a large conscript army at the outset. Its professional force, the British Expeditionary Force, BEF, was small, around 160,000 men in 1914, but highly trained and well-equipped. Role: its strategic role was initially conceived as a supporting force, deploying to France to hold the left flank of the French army. The big lie for Britain was that its naval dominance alone would ensure its safety, and that a small professional army would be sufficient for any continental entanglement. Britain would soon learn that a truly global war demanded a truly national mobilization of manpower, shattering centuries of military tradition. The cult of the offensive: why generals were blinded by glory. Underlying almost every nation's strategic blueprint was the pervasive cult of the offensive. Generals across Europe, steeped in the traditions of Napoleonic warfare and believing in the decisive power of shock and maneuver, were blinded by the big lie that rapid, aggressive attack was the only path to victory. Doctrine: military manuals emphasized the moral superiority of the offensive and the decisive nature of the will to conquer. Technological misunderstanding: they consistently underestimated the devastating defensive power of new weapons like machine guns and rapid-fire artillery. The static, grinding horror of trench warfare was simply not conceived of in their grand plans. This universal belief in the decisive offensive led to initial strategies that called for relentless frontal assaults, resulting in catastrophic casualties in the opening weeks and months of the war. Europe had built the ultimate doomsday machine, but its generals, mesmerized by the big lie of glorious attack, had no contingency for the grim reality of defensive firepower. The stage was set, the weapons primed, and the strategies drawn, all leading inexorably towards a bloodbath none could truly foresee.
In Chapter 3, we'll witness the terrifying culmination of this fervor as Europe builds its ultimate gunpowder arsenal, creating the Doomsday Machine that would soon unleash unprecedented destruction. If you're eager to understand the arms race and fatal war plans, hit that like button and subscribe. Join us for the next chapter in this essential historical journey, or explore the full playlist. Thank you for listening.